Hey all, and welcome to Week 12 of the NFL season. This is the NFL DFS Slate Playbook here at No Huddle Fantasy Sports. Today is Saturday, November 28th, 2020, and we're talking NFL-specific main slate DFS for this upcoming Sunday. For tomorrow, we're covering core plays, guys that I believe you should be building your lineups around at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, even everybody's favorite position, the tight end. So sit back, relax, let's talk NFL-specific DFS. This is No Huddle Fantasy Sports. Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to No Huddle Fantasy Sports. Officially welcome to the craziest week in NFL so far in 2020. This has been a crazy season overall. In fact, all sports in 2020 so far have been pretty crazy as far as what's going on in the world and some of the negativity, just generally some of the missed games, postponements, late starts to season, early cancellation of seasons. You know the deal. If you're involved in sports, follow sports. It's been pretty crazy this season, and it seems to be starting to catch up with the NFL. Now you will notice this video in particular here at No Huddle Fantasy Sports on a Friday, on a Saturday, typically for NFL main slate DFS, is typically a different style video. I'm doing it differently today because it has been absolutely crazy. We're coming off of a Thanksgiving slate, 2-game slate actually that ended up happening. So I hopefully, first of all, thank you for guys for joining me, but more importantly, hopefully you guys had a great Thanksgiving, a happy Thanksgiving, and spent some quality time with family and all that good stuff. It's a great time of the year. We're entering the holiday season. Absolutely wonderful time of the year. So hopefully you guys are enjoying that. But more than that, this video in particular, I couldn't put out a normal video because things are changing and happening so very quickly that it's hard to keep up. Pretty much any video I put up outside of an hour before lock tomorrow is going to go stale. It's going to be almost useless to you guys. So for that reason, I'm going to just walk through in a pretty quick fashion here the main guys that I'm considering, the main core plays that I am considering for Week 12. We'll do it a little bit differently. I'll show you guys obviously the optimizer I use. That's Daily Fantasy Nerd. If you guys enjoy watching this video, if you enjoy what you're seeing as we put together lineups through this actual optimizer, feel free to check down in the description. Click the link down there. I believe we get a free week. It's a good week to use it. It'll actually extend into next week too. So you get basically 2 NFL weeks, Week 12, Week 13 out of it. It's worth checking out. I've used it all season long, very successful. But I'm not going to push that too much. We'll walk through that there. We'll talk about some of the stats that I use to focus in on guys. And then we'll try to build a lineup over on FanDuel. Now, this video does apply to both DraftKings and FanDuel. The pricing you will see will be geared towards FanDuel. But overall, the same thoughts apply here. So make sure you consider that. And as always, thank you guys so much for tuning in here. As I mentioned, hopefully you guys had a great Thanksgiving. Had some good time off there if you were able to enjoy it. And spend some quality time with family. Or really watch football if that's what you wanted to do for Thanksgiving. You certainly were able to do that. We're diving into Week 12 here. Again, first and foremost, there is a lot to talk about basically in terms of, I won't mention specifically the name because as I mentioned in other videos, they take down your video for mentioning one specific word. But in general, we scroll up here to the actual game. So Thursday night we had Baltimore-Pittsburgh scheduled for the late 8:20 primetime game. That did not happen on Thanksgiving. It was postponed until today, or I should say until Sunday. That game is now moved till Tuesday. As far as I'm aware, there's like 18, 20 players on the Ravens that have had tested positive. There are several coaches now on the Steelers, and this came out today. I believe James Conner has tested positive. More so than that, all 3 quarterbacks, I believe, for the Denver Broncos. That's basically the first string, second string, and third string, including Drew Lock, all tested positive. So I don't know what's going to happen there. There's word that Royce Freeman could play quarterback. He's like the 4th string quarterback. Absolutely crazy there. The San Francisco 49ers, in other news, the county that they play in San Francisco, basically has said no contact sports for the next 3 weeks. There's no exceptions as of right now, meaning the San Francisco 49ers don't really have a place to play or practice. Now, they are on the road. You can see here they're playing against the Rams in LA. But in general, that's kind of what's shaping up here. Other guys that I'm aware of as of right now, Jonathan Taylor, I believe, is now scratched because of a positive test again. So moral of this story is it's a crazy week. There is a lot happening. Again, that's why this video is a little bit different. A lot of what I'm going to talk about could change into tomorrow. The most important thing you can do if you're trying to play DFS is to make sure you stay up to date on all of the protocols, all of the postponements, all of the guys that are out, all of that craziness that's going on. But besides that let's talk generally. Typically what we do here very, very quickly is take a look at some of these scores, take a look at some of the Vegas lines here. I think it's good for an outlook on the slate as an overall picture for what's happening. So some of the games that are seeing above a 50 over-under, games that I believe you can target for stacks, for offenses, Tennessee at Indiana, 51.5. You have Las Vegas playing in Atlanta at 53.5. And then you have the Chargers, LA Chargers, playing in Buffalo at 52. And then finally here, Kansas City at Tampa Bay. It's going to be a great game as far as I'm aware, that as long as everybody's playing in that game. You have some crazy teams, crazy quarterbacks, a lot of good offensive players playing in a game with some good defense too. Kansas City playing at Tampa Bay with a 57 over-under. The good thing about all of these games, they are all, including this last game, within 4 points. Most of them are 3.5 spreads. That's really good. That's really good for offenses. The game should remain close. Teams are going to pass a lot. It's not going to completely eliminate running backs, especially home running backs. So again, things you guys need to consider as we look at the slate. One other game that's worth mentioning, Carolina at Minnesota is listed at 50 here as an over-under. Again, another game that's favored the home team here, Minnesota, by 3, so a close game. That game has bumped up and down between 49.5, 50. Still a good total there on that game. The only games that seem pretty avoidable overall, 44.5 right now for Miami at New York Jets, 44 for the Giants at Cincinnati. And then worst of all, I think here is New Orleans at Denver. Again, you have, I don't know who's going to be starting for Denver at quarterback. And then you have Tyson Hill playing quarterback, obviously, for New Orleans. That game's at 43 right now. All these are worth considering here. What I'll also do is quickly bring up now, this is the projected usage rate, but something you can do in here is sort by points projected for each team. Some games some teams, again, I think worth considering for stacks overall based upon Vegas totals. We'll correlate this into our own plays here. But Kansas City, 29.5. Buffalo, 29. Las Vegas, 28.5. Cleveland, 28. All those teams 28 and above, very, very interesting in terms of a stacking perspective, so something to keep in mind there. And then as we come down to the bottom of the list here, Cincinnati, Denver, New York Jets, all below 19 projected points. In fact, you can lump San Francisco in there at 19.3. So again, all of these teams at the bottom here are almost avoidable in terms of a team you want to stack with. How does that play out with some of the teams we already mentioned? Well, something interesting here is Miami is actually 25.8 for an implied team total. Tua is supposed to be missing this game, so Ryan Fitzpatrick is back. But again, if we go back to the main list here, you see that pretty scary 44.5, but really that's because of the Jets here. So again, not to waste too much more time there. Weather looks to be okay for all of these games. Again, make sure you check all of the health concerns, all of the postponements, guys missing because of either injury or being tested and coming out as positives. All of those things are going to come into play tomorrow, but more importantly, we now have an outlook on this particular slate. I will say what I've done so far as I've researched and gone through the plays and had my video originally scheduled here, I'm pretty much sticking in the higher end in terms of running backs. Really, really expensive running back. We're going to talk about Dalvin Cook again, but in terms of quarterbacks and stacks, pretty much going to pay in that mid tier, not low tier, not super high tier. I will mention all guys, of course, that I'm interested in, but we'll play through that here. We'll walk through some of those plays. So again, I'm going to quickly rush through this. You're not going to get as much detail as you do in normal videos, again, simply because it's hard to keep up here with what's happening in week 12. But to start off here, I have it selected in Daily Fantasy Nerd at the quarterback position. Hopefully I don't get in trouble for this, but we're going to bump over to Pro Football Focus here. I like to start here, and this is some of the it's worth paying. If you guys don't have Pro Football Focus and don't pay for their premium service, it's definitely something you want to consider for DFS. Again, you're trying to leverage all tools here, but I'll let you into the layer here. Hopefully, again, this doesn't get me in trouble. I'm sorting this by coverage. So we're 12 weeks in, 11 weeks worth of data. We have a lot of data on teams. This is the grading system that Pro Football Focus uses for coverage units, for defenses, for offenses. A lot of different things come into play here, but we're focused on the coverage of teams. You can see games that are in play this weekend. Obviously, Detroit already played, but Jets, Carolina, Giants, Texans, Raiders, Jacksonville, all of these teams sort of fall towards the bottom here, bottom third of teams, bottom 5 of teams. So something to consider attacking with quarterbacks. Again, bumping back over to the lineup optimizer here, let's talk about which guys are in good spots. So I'll give you my first couple of guys that I think are most intriguing to me. First and foremost is Matt Ryan here. He's playing at home in a dome versus Las Vegas this week. He's $7,600, a price on FanDuel that is very reasonable in my opinion. Helps me fit some of the other guys I'm really interested in. But in general, Atlanta playing at home, Matt Ryan has some of the best offensive weapons in football in both Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. Both of those guys definitely can be stacked there. But you can go back. He has not been playing well here, but they have continued to throw the ball a ton. They're trailing often. They're not a great team. They're not winning this season. There's nothing really that favors Atlanta in terms of a great team, but they still have a great offense. Some things I think are important here. Obviously, Matt Ryan, we know what he can do. You can see points where he has thrown the ball 40, 45 times, multiple touchdowns, has broken that 300-yard passing mark several times this year. If you're playing DraftKings, that's very important here. I think this is definitely a spot. Bouncing back over here, I talked about the Las Vegas Raiders. Their secondary is graded 26th overall in football out of 32 teams. They're very young in their secondary. They're banged up. But more importantly, they also do not have much of a pass rush. So I just sorted this by pass rush. They're ranked 31st overall in football. So you're getting two things out of this. A, you're getting a very bad secondary, very bad coverage unit. And B, Matt Ryan should not face much pressure, even if he might not have the greatest offensive line. The Raiders are showing basically no ability to rush the passer this week, or I should say this season. So definitely a good spot in my opinion for Matt Ryan. And again, the price is making this attractable to me based upon some of the other guys I'm trying to fit, and I will mention here later on. So Matt Ryan is probably my number one quarterback on the slate. 25.5 over, or I should say implied team total for him, so a healthy implied team total. The game itself, I mentioned earlier, 53.5, so very nice. The highest on the slate at the moment. Overall, over under on this game. The spread on this game is 3, so the game should remain close. They're going to throw the ball a lot. And last but not least here, you're basically getting a home quarterback playing in a dome that is an underdog. So I do really like Matt Ryan here. Todd Gurley is missing from that lineup, so they may have to throw the ball just a little bit more. Worth considering Matt Ryan as my number one quarterback as of right now. Number 2 for me, we're going to pay up here another $1,000. We're going back to the well with Josh Allen. He's starting to play really, really well again. Starting to play as if he was playing earlier this season. You can see going week 1, 2, and 3, 4 of this season, he was an MVP candidate. He was on fire, doing a lot of great things, both on the ground with his legs and through the air. And then he kind of hit a lull moment there. He had week 6, 7, and 8 basically did nothing. Definitely was not worth his price tag of that $8,000+ range. But as of the last couple of weeks when they really needed him, weeks 9 and weeks 10, you're seeing Josh Allen really turn it up. He has broken basically, he didn't break 300 yards in both games, but he had 415 yards in that week 9 game, 284, very close to that 300 yard. But what I most importantly focused on here is they're still throwing the ball a ton. They are not handing the ball off in Baltimore. It is all run through Josh Allen. You're seeing nearly 50 pass attempts per game, heavy volume. They are in a tougher matchup than most quarterbacks this week, and that is the passing game of the Bills. Playing the Chargers, again, if you want to bounce back here in terms of coverage, the coverage of the Los Angeles Chargers is pretty good this season. They're ranked 13th overall, so they're top half of the league. Their actual pass rush is even better than that, I believe. Yes, they're ranked 9th. Obviously, Joey Bosa in that pass rush. It's a deadly pass rush, but it's not something I'm fully sold on. I'll use it where I can. I'll focus, like for Matt Ryan, for example, definitely helps put Matt Ryan in play. But when you're talking about Josh Allen, you're talking about a guy that can do a lot against any defense. I do like Josh Allen here. Now, really, really good, attractive implied team total of 29. This game itself, again, bouncing back up here, playing at home, 52 over under. He is a home favorite, but not by that much. We've seen the Chargers hang with teams, and we've seen basically shootouts with the Chargers over the last couple of weeks. I like his price at $8,600. You compare him with Diggs. It does get pricey overall. It's expensive in terms of stacking him, so you're going to have to eat some lower price players elsewhere. But I do like Josh Allen as my second favorite quarterback this week. The other thing I will point out with him very quickly is he continues to run the ball. So it's a minimum of basically 7 rushing attempts per game. The downside is last week we didn't see any red zone rushing attempts, but prior to that, you saw basically, 12 red zone rushing attempts across 3 weeks. Hopefully we get more of that. That'll lead to some extra points, extra scoring in the red zone, but nonetheless, he offers a little bit of a floor with his legs. Two other guys I will quickly mention since we're on the quarterback position here that I'm definitely interested in. Tom Brady, even though he's playing at home, I mean, this is what happens. Tom Brady has a bad game, comes back with a monster game. Has a bad game, comes back with a monster game. This is a game he's going to get up for, right? This is a game versus Kansas City, cream of the crop, AFC versus NFC right now. I believe Tom Brady is in a good spot here. Hopefully will be lower owned. He's only $7,900, a little bit more expensive than what we talked about for Matt Ryan. 26.3 implied team total, so a healthy number there. Kansas City on the road is a favorite at -3.5, so Tom Brady is an underdog at home in Tampa Bay. And finally with him, you have a ton of weapons. He now has Antonio Brown, but you have Godwin, you have Mike Evans, even Scotty Miller. There's a ton of weapons in that offense for Brady. Gronkowski's there. I do like Tom Brady in a bounce back spot this week. Not as much as I do these other guys I just mentioned, but in general, I do like Tom Brady. And I also like, on the other side of that, Patrick Mahomes. It's a tough defense to face. I believe that'll lower the ownership of Patrick Mahomes here. Tampa Bay is a great defense. But it doesn't matter. Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. You get him at lower ownership. The only thing bad with him is the fact that he's $9,000. So you're not going to be able to fit very many players that are expensive outside of him on your roster this week. But Patrick Mahomes definitely squarely in play. Those are my top 4 quarterbacks in order. Again, Matt Ryan. We go with Josh Allen, Tom Brady, and Patrick Mahomes. Now bouncing over to the running back position. Again, we will quickly look at what Pro Football Focus has here in terms of a rush defense. Hopefully, again, that I don't get in trouble. But you can see here, teams that are in play on this Week 12 slate. Buffalo Bills are 32 out of 32 teams in terms of a rush defense. They've actually been very, very bad, very inefficient at stopping the run this year. Definitely a team you can attack on the ground. The Panthers, the Cardinals, the Texans already played. Cowboys already played. You have the Raiders, Bengals, and then the Patriots. All teams that have surprisingly struggled against the run this year. Teams that you can definitely take running backs against. And then something else that I typically like to quickly refresh and look at myself or look at before, while we set our own lineups here and set running backs. Cincinnati giving up 5 yards per carry this season. Miami 4.8. Buffalo, again, that team is dead last, but they're also 28th overall in terms of yards per carry given up on the ground. So really, really a good team to attack with running backs at 4.8, 4.6 for the Chargers, 4.6 for the Arizona Cardinals, and then Kansas City sitting at 25th at 4.6. Carolina also tied with them. So again, just something to kind of give you an outlook at running backs that you may want to consider as we move forward. Now, pricing does matter. The first guy I will mention here is Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is $11,000 on FanDuel. It is very hard to fit him with anybody but basically Matt Ryan that I already talked about. But Dalvin Cook is squarely in play this week for Carolina. Minnesota itself has a 27 implied team total. They're playing at home. They're favored by 3.5. The guy plays 85% of the snaps. He has 4 targets in each of the last 2 games. The dude does everything. 27 attempts on the ground. I mean, look at this. 30, 22, 30, and 27. Those are just rushing attempts on the ground. I mean, he basically has 100 yards in each of the last 4 games. Even last week, it's tough to pay off when you're $10,500. It's tough to pay off when you're $11,000. But I'll take 115 yards and a touchdown and 5 receptions for 45 yards. I mean, it doesn't quite equal value, but I'll still take that on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I still think he's in play at his price over there. He's by far my favorite running back. I mentioned Carolina giving up 4.6 yards per carry. They're bottom third of the league. Really bad versus the run. They're bottom 10 in terms of a grade from Pro Football Focus. They're just not very good at stopping the run. Again, the guy checks every box for you. Dalvin Cook at an expensive price tag does squarely fit into my lineups, especially the Matt Ryan lineups. I do like Dalvin Cook. Don't want to talk about Alvin Kamara. The only thing I will mention very quickly is he did not get very many targets with Taysom Hill at quarterback. So I don't know if I'm going to go there this week. I probably won't, to be honest with you. Josh Jacobs is the only way I'm playing Josh Jacobs to give you guys a fair evaluation here at $8,000 on FanDuel is a comeback player versus my Matt Ryan stacks, and it's kind of my second or third comeback player. I'm mostly coming back with tight end or wide receiver in that stack, given that they're on the road here in Atlanta. But Josh Jacobs, just to give you guys kind of an idea, always want to come back against your stack with somebody from the opposite team. Josh Jacobs would be that guy, or could be that guy for you there. Derrick Henry probably skipping over versus a good Indianapolis defense. James Robinson is probably my second favorite running back on this slate. He has not done a whole lot over the last couple of weeks, but he's consistent in terms of his usage, in terms of the amount of touches he gets. He's $7,400. He's at a price tag where it does make sense. I think you can continue to play him. He is playing at home this week, which does help. He checks a lot of boxes there. He's playing a good majority of the snaps. They're just not a very good team. They're on their backup quarterback. Cleveland, surprisingly, is not that good versus the run, in my opinion. Now, we could bounce over to some of the stats here, and they do suggest that Cleveland is pretty good versus the run, but I challenge you to really dig into those numbers. So 4 yards, they're ranked in the top 10, meaning top 10 in terms of best teams versus the run here at 4.0 yards per carry. But we've seen elite backs basically do a lot of damage versus them. They've played against some really, really bad teams. The whole AFC North has played just a really, really easy schedule. So I'm not scared basically of taking James Robinson at home, a guy that gets a lot of good usage. I think he offers a little bit of value at his price tag. He does not come off the field when they're trailing. So playing at home here, I do like James Robinson at $7,400. Conversely, I do like Nick Chubb. If he was at home, I would love Nick Chubb. But even on the road here against Jacksonville should be a team, if we bounce back to Pro Football Focus here, that is not very good versus the run. Let's scroll. They're 14th, so a little bit surprisingly better of a team versus the run than I had anticipated. But nonetheless, Nick Chubb is a monster. He's basically the reason they win games. So I do like Nick Chubb here on the road. Other guys that I think worth considering here that may be off your radar, Kenyon Drake. The thing here with Kenyon Drake is his usage bounces around a lot. You'd like to see 20. I'd take even 16 attempts on the ground on a regular basis. Doesn't always get that. More so, the downside is 3, 4, 3 red zone attempts. That's really, really good. But these numbers could be double if not for Kyler Murray being the red zone back there. He does take a lot of touchdowns away from these guys. Nonetheless, I still like Kenyon Drake at $6,200 here against New England. New England is surprisingly not that good versus the run. In fact, you can see them listed here as 25th overall in terms of a grade from Pro Football Focus. Going back to the list here of yards per carry, you can see the New England Patriots are 15th overall, so right in the middle of the pack at 4.3 yards per carry. But those are some of the guys I thought were worth mentioning that are basic pricing, guys that you have heard of. Now, some value plays I think that are squarely in play. The first guy I think I have excluded here, so I'll go ahead and open that up. But so you can see I just remove the exclusions and I'll sort this by value. So Hines here, Jonathan Taylor has tested positive, will be missing this upcoming game. So I do believe Hines at his price tag, which sits at $5,700 on FanDuel versus Tennessee, is squarely in play. The team's projected 27.3 points. They're favored. They're at home. They like to run the ball a lot. So, they don't want to throw the ball with Phillip Rivers. So I think Hines, he had been getting a lot of carries, a lot of run, a lot of red zone usage just with Jonathan Taylor in the lineup. And now he is kind of by himself. Now, there is some risk. He could give up some carries to some other running backs, but in general, he is in play, in my opinion, at his price tag. You don't need a ton out of him. He's a value play for sure. Again, checks a lot of boxes here. Does play out of the backfield on third downs a lot, so he's not a guy that should come off the field. But even if you only get 50-60% of the snaps, at his price, with these amount of points projected, playing at home as a favorite, no real competition in that backfield. I do like Hines as a great value play here. And then the other guy I do want to mention here, he's not listed on this value list, but in general, I'm going right back to the well here. We got saved by a touchdown, but Damian Harris, if I could find him on this list, that's how far down he is. But he is a guy that I do have interest in. We'll just type it in. Damian Harris for New England. You can see here playing Arizona. Arizona is a team that does struggle to stop the run. They are 26th overall, giving up 4.6 yards per carry. They are also ranked 30th overall in football against the run. We know New England wants to run the ball. Whether it's through Cam Newton or any of their 15 running backs, they want to run the ball. Damian Harris was saved by a short touchdown last week, but in general, it wasn't a great outing. We did play him. I think you realistically will get 15 to 20 touches out of him versus Arizona at home. I will take that. I think that's a great spot for him. He's a good back. I mean, he's by far their best actual true running back. If you go back to this past week versus Houston, the only downside, he didn't play a ton of snaps, but he played the second most amount of snaps behind James White, and the only reason is they fell behind. Cam Newton threw for almost 400 yards, so I think that's unusual there. If they get back to their ways, their New England ways, Damian Harris should be in a good spot for a good game here as a value back. Again, $6,000 here on FanDuel. I do like Harris, so that is kind of my value evaluation there. I do like Hines. I do like Harris. Obviously, Dalvin Cook standing out as my favorite back. We talked about when to use Josh Jacobs. I do really like James Robinson. I do like Nick Chubb. And coming down the list here, again, I mentioned some of these other guys like Kenyon Drake. So take that into consideration as you choose your running backs. Now, bouncing over to wide receiver here, and just bear with me 1 second here. I'm going to exclude all these games, which came back into play when I hit remove exclusions. But that'll help us look at the list here a little bit better. Going back over to wide receiver, though, two guys I want to mention very, very quickly. If we're going to play Matt Ryan, we have to play Calvin Ridley. We have to play Julio Jones. Even if we don't play Matt Ryan, I think both of those guys are in play this week. Those guys are monsters. They do what they do. Now, Julio Jones is coming off a pretty brutal game. 2 receptions, 2 targets. In fact, Matt Ryan didn't do very good in that game. And I also don't believe Calvin Ridley did. He did have 9 targets, which you like to see. I think I like Calvin Ridley more than Julio, if you had to ask for my opinion. Both of those guys, obviously, the guys you're stacking with Matt Ryan. Now, other guys that are definitely in play, Keenan Allen each and every single week is in play. Just keep playing him. Double-digit targets or a touchdown, if not both, in basically every game this season with Herbert. So at $8,200, it is getting very expensive. His price rises every single week, but I will continue to play him. I like him a ton in this matchup. Even though it's Buffalo, their defense is not very good this year. But I will say, when I play, pretty much Keenan Allen is the guy I'm bringing back against my Josh Allen stacks. In addition to that, Stephon Diggs is the guy I am mostly pairing with Josh Allen, but a guy I definitely will consider outside of just Josh Allen too. Other guys worth considering here, Justin Jefferson continues to be in good matchups. I do like Justin Jefferson in this matchup again this week. He didn't get a ton of targets last week, which is a little bit disappointing, but as you can see throughout the season, he doesn't need a ton of targets. This guy's a very talented receiver, does a lot just by catch and run. So in general, I do like Justin Jefferson again this week. He does stand out to me. Will not be touching players like Michael Thomas until Drew Brees and some more stability and predictability comes back to the quarterback position. But coming down the list here, we will sort now by value. Other guys that I think are in play this week. I mentioned Justin Jefferson. I think he obviously stands in at a good price at $7,000. Cole Beasley is another guy that I do pair time and time again with Josh Allen, but you have to pick and choose wisely. And this was a call by No Huddle Fantasy Sports. We said play inside receivers against Arizona. We were stacking Josh Allen. We were stacking Josh Allen, not with Diggs, but mostly with Beasley, and it worked out very, very good. So again, something you want to consider this week. I don't know exactly. You're going to have to do a little bit of research here at which receiver will be playing inside for New England, but whoever that is somebody that you want to play against that Arizona inside, basically secondary coverage. That really covers all the receivers that I'm heavily interested in. Again, depending on who you're pairing with, obviously, if you're going to go with Patrick Mahomes, players like Tyreek Hill come into play. If you're going to go with Tom Brady, basically all of those Tampa Bay receivers become in play. It is difficult, in my opinion, to pick one of those receivers just because there are so many now. But it's obviously Godwin, Evans, and Antonio Brown, all of those guys in play definitely with Tom Brady. But besides that, it's tough to take anyone from Denver. It's tough to take anyone from San Francisco and the Rams right now without knowing how that's going to play out. You can pick and choose against some of these other teams, but in general, I think I gave you probably my favorite plays there, my most interested receivers. We will bounce quickly over to the tight end position here, and you can see right off the bat here, Travis Kelce, again, probably the number one tight end in all of football right now. But in general, definitely the probably my most interested tight end, if I had to pay up this week, would be Travis Kelce. I will be pairing him with Mahomes where I can, but mostly I will be playing Waller. And how this is playing out is simply because I am playing Atlanta stacks. I'm playing a lot of Matt Ryan with either Julio, Calvin Ridley, or both, and then I'm coming back with Darren Waller. So to be perfectly honest with you guys, Darren Waller is squarely in play this week. I believe Atlanta is either number 1 or at a minimum top 5 in terms of points given up to the tight end position. Darren Waller has had an up and down season a little bit, but he still is one of the best tight ends in all of football, in a great matchup here on the road, playing in a dome, a really good spot for the passing game versus Atlanta. I do really like Darren Waller. And then to sort by value, you can see it simply just doesn't work this week. There's not a lot of value at the tight end position. Other guys, again, that I will quickly mention, Rob Gronkowski, if you want to go with a tight end versus that team. There's a lot of mouths to feed in Tampa Bay, but if you want to, pair anybody cheaper with Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, I think does become in play. And then besides that, Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram has shown a little bit more over the last 3 or 4 weeks. You can see here, last week wasn't so great, but before that, you saw 29 targets across 3 weeks. Hopefully, we get back to that type of Evan Ingram here against Cincinnati on the road. They are favorites, but this is the New York Giants versus Cincinnati. I think Ingram is in a good spot versus them. It should be a good spot for the Giants in general. But that really covers all of my favorite plays for the week. Hopefully you guys are doing your research. Hopefully you guys are getting prepared for tomorrow and kind of giving yourself a lot of contingency plans. Again, I apologize that this video is different than most that I put out for DFS playbook videos, but in general, it was too hard. It was just not possible. It was not going to be good for you guys for me to put out a more in-depth written video simply because it was going to change. So again, when you wake up tomorrow, when you get your lineup set for tomorrow, make sure you check to see who's in, who's out, who has tested positive, which games are getting moved. All of that nonsense is now in play. It's a crazy week 12. It's been a crazy season, but if you stay up on your homework, if you make sure you do the research, you can prevail. We will prevail. Hopefully these picks are helpful for you guys. Hopefully you enjoy these videos. If you enjoyed, if you stuck here to the end, please make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel. But besides that, I wish you guys the best of luck in week 12 NFL DFS, and I will catch you in the next video.